This is Geek Gab with your host, Dornall, and me, Daddy Warpig. We are back. Geek Gab for Monday, December 9th, 2024. And today, folks, we are going to be talking with Joel, who is writing a role playing game, an entire universe of role playing games. But before then, do you have any news from this week?
Hey, it's been a slow week for me, other than crazy stuff happening in the real world. We don't usually do non-geeky events, but it's wild out there in Normaland. Um, I did see a Liam Neeson movie that I would recommend that you check out, Running All Night. Um, it's one of those latter-day Liam Neeson films, lots of action, lots of chasing, very intense. But without stepping out of our normal geeky zone and into current events or politics, I think I'm out for this week.
I haven't been watching anything for like the last 4 or 5 weeks. I've been playing Stalker 2, so I guess I'm going to review that at some point. But that's about it. I've been playing Stalker 2 and working a whole lot. I have nothing. That's what I'm trying to say. That was my secret message to indicate that I have nothing. I haven't
So,
heard any news.
so what you're saying is, and if I'm reading between the lines here, Daddy Warpig, that the two of us have been all work and no play for the past week, and so it's good that Joel is here to save us from the fire.
Oh yeah, I briefly thought of going and seeing Wicked, but then again, I thought to myself, or I could stay home and work 12 hours a day and be happier.
Yes,
So
yes.
that was my situation. And you really have to focus in and compare on how many other things I have done rather than work to understand that I chose to not go see Wicked. I have heard, honestly, I've heard from lots of people that Wicked is actually good, but I have still decided not to go see it because I just am not that interested.
We're not the target audience for that.
And we even did a like a musical review show a month or two ago. I'm still not interested in going and seeing Wicked.
I would be
Um,
interested solely if they have a Gilbert and Sullivan-esque, super complicated, like lyrically complicated song that I could memorize and then sing to impress people. Because I already got a more humane Mikado from the Mikado, and almost all of a modern Major General from the Pirates of Penzance memorized. So I need a new one to eat, like mentally devour. So if they have that, then I'll go. And in no other circumstance or universe would I go see Wicked.
I I actually went and saw the touring company for Wicked when it came through Salt Lake City because my sisters were going. They had an extra ticket. They invited me, so I went and saw it, and it was enjoyable, but it was not as good as Les Miserables, which I saw on Broadway, or some of the other shows. Uh,
How did Sec up like compared to like Hamilton or something like that? That was the last Broadway I saw. Was the first half of Hamilton, and then I fell asleep for unrelated reasons. I was watching in the middle of the night. And I was exhausted, but that first half was fire. I was really digging it.
I saw Hamilton on the Disney Channel. They videoed
Okay, so
three.
that's where I was watching it too. That edit is so frantic. Like they keep like you remember it was like they kept zooming in on people and like this they would pan and like just move the camera around the stage. It's like Jesus Christ, how do you watch? Like, who watches a musical like that? Like who's constantly whipping their head around like they're on a roller coaster when they're watching Hamilton? Dude, sit still and look forward. I don't expect much out of my cameraman here.
I wonder if
That
he has
is
some producer in his ear. What are you doing? You can't just hold the camera still. We need some excitement, action.
Yeah, it really did feel like that. And it was like, let's really show it off. This is an exciting scene. We need exciting camera motion. No, dude, you don't.
It was cut like an MTV video. That is not a lie.
It absolutely was.
dear.
It was like watching in living color.
So,
God,
but anyways,
nostalgic for Technotronic. Okay, we should probably change the subject.
I decided.
I don't know. I think we're going to talk about musicals tonight.
The next 90 solid minutes are our opinions on musicals, people. Strap in.
You know, it's a really an overlooked musical that I nevertheless love, Chess, from 1986.
I don't remember that one. I thought you were going to say Cats, and I was like, hey, look, buddy. We can't. I will go many places with you, but not there.
The big problem with Chess is, okay, I'm going to stop this, but it's actually true. The opinion I was about to release is true. It was great on the West End musical in London, and then they had to revamp it because too many people liked the American, and it was the same problem as modern shows. They really had to remake the whole show to make it clear that I absolutely hated the American, and you weren't supposed to like him at all, and you were really supposed to loathe the American. He's a terrible person. He's a bad guy. And so they rewrote the whole show to make sure you knew the American was a bad guy, and then made it into a terrible musical. So when it debuted on Broadway, it bombed.
Well, you know what? The Brits not understanding why people love America is pretty much why America is no longer a British colony, folks.
So
they just don't get us.
They don't. I don't know why. We're like kryptonite to them, at least in that regard, like social kryptonite. So that's so. I like that we went from Hamilton to that. There's a patriotic theme running through tonight's little podcast.
We have our moments. We have our moments of patriotism. I will say, to completely destroy this topic, the last show I remember seeing and enjoying was the Book of Mormon. That was a pretty good show.
Yeah, no, that killed it. Okay, let's talk about something else.
Welcome to the show. We've got, and you're gonna have to do most of the introduction yourself because you are a brand new person with a brand new product and game that I just heard about yesterday or the day before. Welcome to the show, Joel of Five Emperor Games, Lone Wolf Fists, Fisting, whatever you got.
That's accurate. That's exactly what we call ourselves. Yes.
Fantastic. So welcome on.
Thanks for having me. I'm really, I was kind of stoked. I'm kind of new to you guys too, so this is a little awkward, but you both seem boisterous and enthusiastic and extraordinarily nerdy. So I was like, well, we've got at least three things in common. But yeah, no, I make elf games. The most recent ones have been Kung Fu in the Post-Apocalypse, deeply inspired by Fist of the North Star, but like generally by the whole constellation of like trashy, violent, like late 80s, early 90s anime. You're talking like your Akira's and like Vampire Hunter D and let's see what else.
Speaking my language.
Totally Princess Mononoke. I guess that was a little more highbrow, but like it was extraordinarily violent. Ninja Scroll, Demon City Shinjuku, just like Bao, if you guys remember that one, a little bit of Ronin Warriors in there. Like basically, if I grew up and I was way too young to watch it and someone's head exploded like a watermelon, I wrote a game about that. It's got a very unusual system, but a very unique one that like I feel like it captures the essence of the wonderful ultra violence and the over the top like larger than life heroes and villains of that. And yeah, it's in a real kitchen sink post apocalypse kind of setting. There's lots and lots of stuff in it. Like I pulled stuff from Japanese and Hindu and Chinese myth and crammed it all in there with like all the weird stuff you'd see in anime, like rubber limbed seductresses and weird tentacle monsters and what have you. And yeah, it's a game where you can fist fight a tank to death with your friends. And like, what else could you want?
See, now we already knew after reviewing your stuff that we would get along. You're naming all the stuff that that I watched when I was younger. Especially the when the Cartoon Network picked that stuff up and it started to become
Yeah.
real mainstream. And you've got a new friend here in one of our guys in the chat, Bradford Walker. As soon as you said Fist of the North Star, that's exactly who I thought of. You guys are about to become best friends for sure.
Yeah, the OVA boom. Yeah, he's got it, man. The great flowering of hand-painted cell animation before it all fell apart around 2000. There are a few shows that are absolutely worth your time post 2000. Right off the top of my head, Soul Eater, One Punch Man, those are worth your time. But yeah, no, I mean Redline. I think Redline was post 2000 as well. Like Redline is amazing, but that's a studio madhouse. So I mean, of course it is. But yeah, no, like there's a couple that are still really, really good. But yeah, like we're just not getting like the original OVA Berserk or Photon Earth or anything like that again, which is really sad. Or Robot Carnival. Oh Lord. Yeah, I wrote the appendix in for this the other day, and it was like as long as my arm. And then I wrote the appendix in for the other half of the book that I'm writing, and it was also as long as my arm. And I was like, I really need to write in the poly canon in this. Anyway, I'm sorry. Go on.
What? No, that's all you. I love it. So, okay, let's get right into your game here. You said that you wanted a game to mimic all that cool stuff, and absolutely. Oh, you know what? No, let's tug on that thread one more time because I just remembered. Are you familiar with the writer Brian Niemeyer?
Niemeyer. No. Refresh my memory.
All right, Brian Niemeyer. He's an award-winning science fiction horror author who is good friends with friends of the show. And one of the things he also does is he does a lot of pop culture scholarship. And his one thing that he really looked into was sort of the death of anime and death of pop culture around the turn of the century. And one of the things that he realized was that all of the animation studios got all their paint from one source.
What?
And yeah, there was one company that mixed all the pigments and made all the paints for all the hand cell shaded animation. And
not just one company, one guy.
One guy, that's right.
One single dude. All those 80s and early 90s anime. One single dude mixed all the colors for them. That's why all of them have the same colors for the cells.
One guy? Oh my god.
One guy. I'll have to share the article with you later.
Yeah, no, share
trust-
that thing. I want to put that in the Fistiverse and immortalize it forever. That's incredible. Also, that scans.
Exactly.
I'm thinking about like all of those anime, and I'm like, no, they pretty much had like everything, like everything from Memories to Akira to what was it, Rojin Z, like all of that had like Armitage the Third, all of them had like that. Yeah, they had the same kind of like concrete with that same kind of like beigeish, whitish, grayish tone. Like I've never seen that again. Wow, that's all my memories are crystallizing now. That's really strange to think about. One guy, my lord.
Yeah, it's great. But what are you gonna do? It's the nature of the beast.
I suppose so. I wish he had an understudy.
Yeah,
That would have been nice for the rest of us.
Well, he retired, and it coincided with the rise of computer animation, which of course is great at filling in all the blanks in between your keyframes, and also making everything look bland and flat.
Yeah, and that's my biggest problem with it is it got really plasticky around that point, as I recall, as the technology was still really new. And like I mean later animes have gotten a little more nuanced with it. They've done some more impressive stuff. But like, yeah, I know, especially right around then. Yeah, I know the old Ghost in the Shell movies. I had an opportunity to grab one of them because there's the original Ghost in the Shell movie, the original cartoon movie, and they made a sequel that was really good, but it wasn't quite as beautiful. And I just grabbed them both anyway. I was like, what's $35 worth of anime secondhand?
Right.
So,
And yeah, Sly Blue Demon. Part of your answer is, art styles
Sly
change because animators change. But yeah, one of the big reasons was the actual physical media. The paints changed. So there you go. We all learned something new today.
Yeah,
Um,
Standalone Complex was really good, actually. It's Standalone. I think that the benefit that they had was that again they had that amazing movie to draw off of for visual inspiration. So they're like, whenever you have something like that, you can always kind of correct yourself towards it. I noticed that whenever I was writing the core book for this game, The Lone Wolf Fist, is that like I could always go back to those like North Star animes that inspired it. Like if I needed to have an idea for a superpower in the game, I would just rewatch Demon City Shinjuku and be like, okay, yeah, neon pink beam of evil that shoots out of your sword that eviscerates people. Got it. You know,
exactly.
that's great. Yeah, it's having that little North Star is useful. Having something you can look at and it's done that is like exactly what you want. That's incredibly orienting as a creative.
So how does that work into your work as a game designer or a RPG writer?
Oh man. Well, okay, so I've had a pretty illustrious career as a person who has failed to find a game he really enjoyed. I think like because I really started running. Let me see. When I was a teenager, I was like 16, 17, and the very first RPG I ever ran actually was D20 Modern. So I'm not like a grognard. I guess that's a grognard to Gen Z and after. But like for me, I felt like a pretty modern gamer. Like at that point, like that was after TSR had already gone out of business and gotten bought by WotC. That was like, the games have been around for goodness 25 years at that point. So the grognards I felt like were, I felt like a new wave kind of guy. Like I got it around in the time like the first Exalted First Edition was getting put together. Vampire was still going strong. So like the 3.0, 3.5 eras whenever I started running stuff, and I it was really awkward learning how to do D20. Like D20 actually had a lot of like weird ideas about it. So actually figuring out how to make that work for me and develop a style as a GM took a while. But once I got there, I found that like the D20 system in the Wizards of the Coast era was very like CCG-ish. Like you would have a build. I mean, you guys played it, I'm sure.
Oh
You
yeah.
would have like builds. It was very everything is in the system, nothing is outside of the system. And I don't know, I felt like that was kind of the thinking I had going into role playing games, that they're just like games, right? Like I played Magic and Warhammer and things like that beforehand. So like for me, it was just everything that the system says can happen is what's possible. And I feel like that really limited me for a really long time. So what I did was if I got into a system that like I felt restrictive, because if you're wanting to GM and you're watching anime like I'm watching anime, you got an itch that's not getting scratched quite right by the way those games are getting run. So I bopped around in different systems for a while. I tried, oh god, let me see. I did Vampire, D&D 3.0 and 3.5. I ran D20 Modern. I finally found Exalted, which was like the big one that lit my brain on fire. And Exalted was cool because like it felt more open-ended. Like you had more stuff like in front of you, and you had more choices. So there were no classes or anything, so you could kind of make the character you wanted to make. And so that was awesome for like realizing, like if you wanted to do anime in an RPG and you were kind of the mindset that it was restricted to just what was on the page, then like that was a really good way to kind of like have those colors to paint with to kind of link this together with the other part of this conversation. And you could kind of make something that was kind of close to an anime character, and the Bissels, like the bad guys, were kind of like the anime bad guys. And the fights kind of felt like anime fights because there were big swings and cool powers, and you did like the little Goku DBZ energy flares and all this going on. So I was like, okay, now we're getting somewhere. But anyone who's ever actually tried to run Exalted Second Edition as a campaign realizes how awful that system is to actually run. It's terrible. It's so ill balanced. And like eventually you just get to this point where like everyone's got these paranoia builds because like characters are super fragile and the weapons are super deadly. Like even weapons that shouldn't be like a big hammer or like a bow and arrow without like what was it? They had ones that could like shoot and they would half your armor, and they weren't even like expensive. They were just like arrows with a certain kind of tip on them that like just normal people could have. And you got like artifact level armor, and you're just like, oh yeah, half that. Because this dude's got a special arrow that's like that costs him like a silver piece, and it's just the most janky, broken, lopsided system. So I got I got disillusioned with that, and then I had this this epiphany moment. So what happened was the Exalted Third Edition Kickstarter happened, and I gave them a lot of money. And along those times, the Adventure Conquer King system also had a Kickstarter, and at this point, their Kickstarter was for Domains at War. And I was like, okay, well, cool. Let me try this thing out. And there was a tier where you could back it and get Domains at War, and you also got a PDF of their core book, which was based on and BECME. And I'd never played editions prior to third edition at that point. So I started reading it, and it was baffling. I didn't understand the gold
Oh, I bet.
thing. I didn't understand. Like, it seemed like there was so much missing, right? Like, you look at BECME and how just like trimmed down it is compared to how like thick and like rules heavy something like Pathfinder or a 3.5 game is. It's like night and day. It's completely different. So trying to make heads or tails of that, I wandered into just kind of randomly the OSR of the time, and that scene was really, really cool. And I started to learn things. I think Philotomy's Musings is like the one thing that kind of made it all click for me. That, and like I think the Alexandrian did this too, where like they had this way of looking at things where it's like, no. Role-playing games aren't just what's in the book. Role-playing games are whatever you say happens. And then occasionally you'll use the mechanics in the book to resolve these specific cases of things. And then you'll make rulings based on, things that show up that, require that kind of thing. And there was all these different ways. Like, it was a totally different philosophy of running and playing games, and it lit my mind on fire. And that was kind of the catalyst. I was about to ready to give up on role playing games. I tried everything. At that point, I was doing Marvel. It was the Marvel Cortex Plus, and like again, it felt flexible. And then you try to play it, it would fall apart. But as soon as I started doing like the old school Renaissance style games, which just turns out it's just kind of the way they used to play D&D, I guess. And I started doing things like the Tactical Infinity, where like the shared imagined world had like as much or more integrity than the written mechanics. My games were so much better. Like, everyone was having more fun. I was having more fun. I felt more creative. I could do more. I felt freer and more creative than I'd ever felt before as a person like running RPGs. And then Exalted Third Ed came out a couple years later, and it was unfortunately an absolute trash fire. And at that point, I kind of abandoned the need for it. I was like, I've got this whole other way of gaming that has made this obsolete to me. So the confluence of Exalted kind of sucking now, and knowing that there was this other way to game, like it aligned with me meeting David Ramirez, one of the guys who was in charge of Legends of Wulin, another game that I tried in my long wanders to find the perfect system. And I really liked Legends, although again, when I tried to play it, it kind of fell apart. It was a little heavy in play. And he tapped me to rewrite it. He was like, hey, we want to do a light version of Legends of the Wulin. And I was like, I'll give it a try. And that is the system that turned into Lone Wolf Fist eventually. I got his blessing, and I got the blessing of Eric Tinbreck, and pretty much everybody who worked on that. Goodness. Jerry Scold, I got his blessing. He actually, both of them helped me out a little bit in the early parts of the design. Shin Chen, the guy who I think financed it in China, was like, yeah, that's fine, go ahead. So yeah, and it's a version of the one roll engine system. It's roll d10s and match them and use that as your action pool basis for the turn. Yeah, so I just kind of, my mind was on fire with both like creativity from the OSR and disappointment from Exalted, and there just wasn't an accessible Fist of the North Star game. And I was like, you know what? I guess I'm the guy who's going to fix that. And yeah, over the course of a year or so, I had a really good Ashcan version of it. And I was graduating from business college, and I was like, you know what? Let's try to do this. Like, let's try to make money off this. Let's see where it'll go. And I put together a Kickstarter, and I made a lot of friends. And yeah, it's just kind of been history since then. Jeez, I didn't mean to talk that much. Wow. It's like you guys actually got the whole history. I've never actually told that to anyone before. So enjoy that, everyone.
I'm honored. We are definitely privileged to hear all that. So a bunch of things jumped out at me. The first one was, diving into the deep end with Axe. Axe was definitely that system that was meant to sort of finish the discussion on OSR. Like, we're gonna do that. And Exalted, Bradford Walker ran Exalted for years. It's definitely the anime game for the types of stuff that we used to watch, and it was definitely aimed straight at us.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I was the target audience for that. And like I agree with Bradford here. A lot of the potential never got realized. Well, that's why I'm here. So that's my mission in life, is to realize that potential. So I hope you like what result it could have been, because that's what I'm writing.
I mean, this is great because if anybody ever asks me, hey, what is this guy's game about? What's his thing about? And then I've got a frame of reference. I can be like,
Yeah,
he's
well,
gonna
yes,
go
exactly. I love that. That's why my avatar here is based on Jaggy from Fist of the North Star. I want people to know what I'm about.
ahead. So I guess you mentioned briefly in that flurry of action the game system itself. So let's talk about that for a little bit. What's playing the game like?
Okay, so it was really important to me that, like, when you're fighting in this game, you had cool decisions to make. I feel like when you're watching an anime, like, they kind of put you in the driver's seat, right? They'll have like the protagonist, and they'll do this really cool thing, and Berserk does this, and like, Bleach does this, and JoJo's Bizarre Adventure does this. Like, every anime does this, right? Where it'll slow everything down, and then they'll simply explain to you what's going on, and they'll like cut to these different parts of this tactical situation and the different things they can do, and like they'll kind of give you a reason why the stakes are what they are, and then they'll have a bunch of cool actions that kind of build off of that explanation. And I really love that. It's a good way to invest people and to get them thinking strategically about the situation, right? And it makes the stakes really apparent. And from that strategic situation, we get drama. All right. So playing the game is kind of like that. In most other games, it's very binary. It's, I want to do a thing. I see what the dice tell me to do, and then we just describe from there. And so the decision is prior to the dice roll. But in my game, the decision is after the dice roll. At the start of your turn, you take up a pile of d10s equal to your effort, and you roll them, and any ones that have matching faces, so like 2 4s or 3 3s or whatever, you put them together, and that's your actions for the turn. You get a single die that you can use once per turn, and then every other action you have is 2 or more matching dice, a set. And so, like, you don't know from turn to turn how many actions you're going to have, or like what they're going to be, because sometimes you'll get low facing sets like 2s, sometimes you get awesome ones like 9s, and like the way you read them is just the number of dice in the set is the 10s, and the facing on them is the ones column. So 2 2s is 22, 3 4s is 34, 1 0 is 10, like, to give you an idea. But the way it works is you roll that at the beginning of the turn, and through your turn, that's your pool of actions. You can use all of your skills with that. You can move with that. You can throw attacks with that. You can boost them with your techniques. And that's my phone going off, by the way. And then you also use that to defend as well. So there's a lot of decisions to be made there. And the game is basically about like making that tactical situation happen for everybody at the start of the round, and then just going through what everyone's decisions are and what cool attacks they do and what havoc they unleash in like a structured enough way that you can follow it, and you're consistently making those like interesting high impact strategic decisions, but in a limited enough way that you're not just sitting there struck with analysis paralysis. And as it turns out, in the game, it actually goes really, really smoothly, which is nice. But you still, like, this is the only game I've ever encountered that does that, where it puts you in like the anime protagonist driver's seat. Okay, I'm gonna go turn my phone alarm off. Talk amongst yourselves.
And I'll go really slow so that you have time to do that. The That it's interesting that you have tactical decisions to make after you've rolled a bunch of dice. So you don't have, here's the tactical situation.
Ooh, that's better.
I want to do X, Y, Z, and then the dice tell me what happens when I try to do X, Y, Z. Instead, you have a tactical situation, and you may want to do X, Y, Z, but you wait to see what the dice tell you, and the dice might say, I can't do X, Y, Z, but I could do A, B, C, or GHI or whatever, right? You've got a couple of different options to work with. Is that how it works?
Pretty much. Primarily, and I wanted to make sure I was kind of simplifying the game as much as possible. Primarily, your character sheet is just your effort pool, your chakra, which give you magic go-go juice, and then your techniques. And the most important thing is your kung fu techniques. So those key off the different facings of your dice. So you kind of have access to different ones depending on what you roll. So generally speaking, lower facing ranges are defensive. The moderate facing ranges are things like, weirder things like strategic things or spells. And the higher facing ranges are all offense and attacks. There's generally an offensive bias in the system. So you kind of want to beat people up and you want to go fast and do that. But like, again, since you don't know what you're going to roll, you're never really certain what you're able to do in a given turn. Generally, when you set your techniques up, you'll kind of know what options you have. But again, the dice can give you unexpected results and unexpected opportunities if your opponent rolls weird too, which they do.
And so it sounds like the rather than having pieces on a board that sort of dictate the tactical situation, it sounds like it's more of a theater of the mind game where
Mhm.
the dice paint a picture of what the tactical possibilities are in this new situation.
Oh yeah, and that theater of the mind is exactly right. Like the battlefield you're on, which I just call a field, is kind of the equivalent of having a big like grid map of squares like in D&D, but instead of being like locked into the squares, it's all descriptive, it's all imagined. So you're located in one of the described areas. So like there's a copse of trees over here, there's a wrecked car over here, there's a burned out building over here, and then you move between those areas with your movement actions. And because it's a little more fluid and a little looser, because it's in theater of the mind, that I found really encourages people to get like really kooky with stunts, because it's not difficult to make those actions, and you're very like agile and fast as one of these super powered anime characters. So yeah, combat's really float and move around a lot, which is very fun. Also, there's a lot of smashing through the scenery because I streamlined all the rules for doing stuff that you would really want to do in a game like this. So like acts of destruction, resisting hideous environmental hazards, all the kooky like kung fu, like ballet movement and like acrobatics, all of that stuff, and a couple of extra things, but primarily that stuff is literally just like take an action, reference a chart. All of those are just chart references, and all the techniques have an alternative use. Usually they're attacks or defenses or a magic spell or something like breathing fire, but almost all of them have an alternative use where they benefit one of those actions too. So like, sure, you can hit somebody so hard into one of their friends that it's like shooting a cannonball into another cannonball. Or if there's nobody nearby you can smash, you can just, use that to boost your strength and lift up a tank and throw it at them instead. So yeah, there's a lot of versatility to it, even though, the dice do play some significant role.
Good. Well, yes, as long as the dice are in the example that you gave, there's sort of like a limitation or a forcing function where the players are encouraged to use their imaginations because of the versatility of the abilities, but it's one of those things where you can't do everything all the time. It creates tactical situations.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
that sounds fun.
It is fun. I mean, like I play tested it for like 5 years, so I'm glad it wound up being fun and play. Um, it, and I'm still like streamlining the rules and what have you. So I just made a cheat sheet for I got a lot of new players with this new Kickstarter. And the most requested thing was a cheat sheet because the system's pretty unusual, as you can probably ascertain. So I got like a 5-page long cheat sheet where I'm just like, okay, here's how you roll the dice, here's how you read the dice. So that's in I'm doing version 3 of that. I've whipped through 2 versions in one day that I had to work, and now I'm working on version 3, and that's going to be the final version. And I'm just going to put that up for free so everybody can check that out.
Oh yeah, that's a great freebie to give out. I want to take a step back from the punch and kick action game, and I would like to know how this game provides for the strategic or the long-term planning of characters or building of whatever scenarios that might come up.
Okay, so are you talking about like in terms of like you're the GM, you just picked up the core book, you need to like what are you prepping? Or are you talking about like as the campaign goes forward, like my guys want to become like the emperor of the wasteland? How can I do that?
Both.
Okay, well, I've got answers for both. So which one do you want first?
Let's start with the dungeon master. So, what tools does the dungeon master have to prepare or come up with interesting scenarios.
And they made my neck look huge in this Avatar PFP. Look at that. That's a lot of neck. Anyway,
Never
okay.
skip neck day.
Never skip neck day, kids. Okay, so for the GMs, I use a lot of the classic tools. I'm a huge believer in the process of things like dungeon crawls, hex crawls, urban crawls, which you learn all about in the Alexandrian. But like the crawl process is really important to me. I love how it kind of drip feeds content, and also how it how it allows you as a player to kind of interact in this kind of more detailed way with the setting. So I'm a big fan of those processes. So all of my tools for GMs are all about like, okay, but for real, how do you how would you what do you make? Like, how do you fill a hex out? Like, what's in there? How do you make interesting places to go to that the players are going to want to interact with? If a fight breaks out, like, how do you turn your prep into a battlefield? Like, how do you prep stuff in a meaningful way without it taking like eternity? Because I mean, people are on a limited time budget here.
No
And then
doubt.
how right, and again, since this is a game about kung fu punching things with like rocket powered super kung fu, when the violence inevitably erupts, how do you deal with the fact that these players can punch through solid concrete? Like, what do you do with that? So it's about like making this. It's about making prep that's like straight out of your imagination onto your table with as little like extra work as possible, and then updating that in play to work within the framework of the rules. And then as the players annihilate it or shape it or even conquer it and just reform it, how do you update that in a way that again isn't super heavy but allows you to consistently change it in a way that's like paced and meaningful and has like a continuity? Because I mean, like, I think like a lot of modern games have lost the concept of like continuity. Like you play like your Apocalypse Worlds and Fates and what have you, and like what was the other one that Kendall Obscura? It feels like the way those are designed is that you're constantly at the whim of GM fiat, and then occasionally the rules will make things concrete for long enough to do one thing, and then they'll go back to just fiat. So there's no real like discussion with the GM about how to like make a history for that or how to have consistency in the setting with that. But like old school hex crawl stuff didn't have that problem. You made your prep, and that acted as the memory of the campaign, right? When you have a dungeon somewhere, it's there in a solid way. You can look at your blueprint and say, like, well, that's there, you know. And so there's a consistency and a history to it. And so when the players go into it and do it, even if they do like stuff that changes the dungeon, you know, like what was the stone to mud or whatever, that you can still record that in a discrete way where like there's still a sense of continuity. It's not like you have to like just remember something that happened 30 sessions ago because you've just been, you know, barfing forth apocalyptica on Apocalypse World, and you're like, I guess this now. You're not just making it up on the spot. You're referencing something, and that gives it a sense of like, again, a sense of continuity that's really critical to like making a campaign meaningful. So, where was I going with that? I'm sorry.
So
So much, my throat gets raw.
I love it. I love it. I guess what I was getting at is, do you have any? Does the game provide any specific tools for that? I mean, you're fond of roll ahead charts and that sort of thing
Oh,
in
big time.
combat.
Yeah,
So
no. Okay, so the way I write,
like we were talking about a hex crawl. Like, what sort of similar tools do you have to a hex crawl? Say, I wanted to
I
sit
just straight
down
up
and
have hex
I want
crawls.
to play like a I want to ref a game that's set in the Legend of the Five Rings universe, and I want
Oh,
to
hell
set up
yeah.
some clans and their holdings and sort of the emperor's location. I want to do a little bit of territory and generate a little bit of intrigue, maybe some interesting uh, characters that the players can interact with or even play. Do you have the tools to sort of bootstrap that kind of game?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, again, I come from an axe background, so domain level play was really important to me. So yeah, and you can legitimately use those same kind of old school prep like techniques that you would use to make that happen in L5R or axe or anything that kind of uses that same like continuity prep / crawl based design. You could use those exact same techniques with the tools in my game. So like we have hexes, I call them tracks. I've got measurement for that. Within the tracks, the discrete adventure areas, kind of your equivalent to things like towns and dungeons, are called are called fields, and that's also like the discrete chunk of prep that you would use for like a battlefield. And you prep it descriptively with a map and key the exact same way you would as an old school thing. You've got your hex map over here, you've got your key that describes what's there, and then it's the same thing with NPCs. Like again, like old school D&D NPCs are very simple creatures, right? Stat wise, they have very low stats. They've got like one hit die. They've got a name and a job, and like they don't have much going on for them, right? Same way with my game. Like your run of the mill post apocalypse survivor, you can pretty much just, he's got a single D10. There you go. Give yourself a description of like this group of people, and there you go. You can generate spontaneous NPCs as they pull them out through interacting with it. And yeah, so like you can basically just do this like a normal hex crawl, and all the tools for that are in the game. And then if you want to go even further with that, you're like, okay, I want like a web of political intrigue between these feuding clans, or not necessarily feuding clans, we're talking L5R, but these clans that they have rival motives. I don't think the Unicorn and Scorpion get along super well. By the way, I love L5R. Just you activated a neuron there. But yeah, you could do that, right? You could give them their daimyos. You could have all the different samurai and the different bushi and shugenja. I told you I love L5R. And you could give them all their own little houses. And again, all this is more or less descriptive. And the great thing about being really rules light, like old school D&D is, like old school L5R is too, for the record. And like my game is that you don't need a lot of prep for this. Like I literally have a chart, and I really like this kind of design. The level up chart, the chart that like shows you how you get more power in the game, like as you get more techniques that increases all of your stats. Like it's kind of one of those games. Well, you can read that chart in reverse, and it gives you the amount of techniques that an NPC of a given rank would have and all of their stats. So all you have to do is choose their technique tree, and they're pretty high impact like choices. Like you're not making many of them. I think like the highest one is like 25 total techniques. Compare that to a starting exalted character, which has 15 total charms, and you're like, oh wait, okay, so the most complicated, deadliest end game boss NPC I'll ever design in your game only has 10 more choices to make than a starting character in 3rd edition. Okay, cool. And again, that's one little chart. You flip to that page, you're like, okay, I want this guy to be of this level, etc. And that's in addition to having like a full-on bestiary in the book filled with monsters and monster stats and territories. Also, if you don't feel like doing any of that, like you want it to happen, but like you don't have any ideas at all, there's a 7-part chapter in the end of it, which gives you the whole setting in chart form. So you can just roll up not only all these places and all these NPCs with names and monsters and political intrigues, but also they can have little mini plot arcs in them and adventure hooks that lead into these larger adventures, all just from rolling dice in it. And you can do that.
See, that's where I'm at, because ain't no one got time for that, and I'm lazy.
Yeah, precisely. And I even give you like really clear instructions in the GM chapter about the minimum prep you should use for the first session and how you should start that out, and even under pitching the game to your friends, because I wanted to use the whole Buffalo, man. So I gave you everything.
Cool. And then you sort of started in on this from the player's perspective.
Mm-hmm.
You said that you love domain play. You brought that in from your Axe experience.
Oh, I love domain play, dude.
And so is there, I should say, so you've got the tools in there for a player has something to look towards. Like if they wanted to build a monastery, that you don't have to build it up on the fly. You've got enough systems in there to get people to, oh yeah, you wanna start your own kung fu school? All right, here are the rules.
Yeah, precisely. As a matter of fact, the NPCs that you will invariably acquire that like follow you and tag you around, there are rules for teaching them kung fu and turning them into your like the beginning of that little mini clan. Yes, again, Sly Blue Demon. That is a brilliant quote. Low prep is key if you don't want to burn out as a GM. That is so important. I'm going to repeat it. Low prep is key if you don't want to burn out as a GM. Because your players are going to push past that hex, right? They're going to go to a bigger dungeon. They're going to kill that NPC, and they deserve to have a game that's big enough and smart enough and real enough that it responds to that choice in a meaningful way, right? But you only have so much time and energy and creativity as a human being. So I made some charts for you. You're welcome.
Cool. So we still have plenty of time to talk. I love hearing about all this game.
Jeez.
I want to talk about your Kickstarter and your communities and the stuff that you're building around the game. I have one more question about the game first.
Sure.
This should be your favorite softball. What's your favorite mechanic, or what's your favorite game design work that you did? Like, what's the thing about this game that you're most proud of?
Ooh, okay. So the thing I'm personally most proud of, there's two. The first one is I inherited something called the Lake and the River from Legends of the Woolen. The lake is what I turned to the effort pool. It's the D10s, and the river is this cool mechanic they had where you had these slots where you could hold dice from turn to turn. So that was kind of cool if you got kind of a good like set a die or two in one turn, but you didn't have like an overall good roll. You could hold that until the next turn. I thought that was neat. Well, I evolved that into the focus slots. And what focus does is it does that same thing. But in addition to that, you can take whole actions and hold them in your focus. So, like, if you want to hold your breath for a really long time, that's how you do it. If you want to wade through hot lava with a really high endurance action, that's how you do it. You just hold it in that set. And that's also how all the grapple mechanics and all those things work. So if you want to sustain an action, you use your focus. And I think that's a really cool mechanic. So that's thing A that I'm really glad I designed, and thing B I'm really glad I designed was the effect charts, which there are 7 types of skill you can do in this game. Everybody has access to them, but I based them on the Marvel face rip charts, if you remember those. And it's tiered so that the higher of a rank you get, the cooler of a thing you can do, and they're descriptive. They interact really nicely with the shared imagined like world. Uh, they give you really clear ideas of what you can do. And I had to study a lot of like actual physical phenomena and a lot of myth to make them, because there's like I think there's like 7 different tiers on them. And they all this cool functionality where like they're kind of capped until you get like the supreme super level techniques. So you can only get so superhuman until you get those moves, and then those blow the cap off, and you can start blowing up cities and things like that. So that's probably the crunchiest, coolest design I have in this, and it's super slick in play because like you just take an action and you're like, okay, what can I do with a rank 5? And you just look at the chart, and that's all the stuff you can do. And it's really, I really like that one. The funnest in play is the Dharma rules. These have proven to be huge. Again, this is Marvel Face Rip. Remember the old karma chart in Marvel Face Rip where there's different like deeds on it, and you get different levels of XP for it.
Oh my
Same
goodness.
exact thing.
Oh
Yeah.
my goodness, I don't, but I've got it right here next to
What?
me at my desk. Hang on,
They're just
I don't.
coincidence? No way.
Just by coincidence, I've got the no.
Oh,
Hang
well,
on,
check out
Children
that
of the
beautiful chart.
Atom, Player's Book. Is it in the Player's Book or the Judge's Book?
I think it's in the player's book because they
Players.
communicated those to the players. The karma charts were awesome because there's stuff on them like when you keep a commitment, you get karma, or when like you do like charity work publicly, you get karma. If you like spare bad guys, you get karma. Like all this stuff, like when you act like a hero, it gets you XP, right? So it would
Yeah,
incentivize you to do the thing that you were supposed to be doing in this game. I did the
yeah,
same thing with my design. With the Dharma rules, they have things like if you challenge somebody and beat them, if you spare someone's life, there's a rule where if you show proper respect to another lone wolf fist, even your enemy, by saluting them properly, you get a little XP. So you have all these things where that really, yeah, there it is. That's maybe the best piece of game design that ever existed. Um, yeah, yeah. See, you commit crimes, you get
public
negatives.
defeat. If
Yep.
people watch you get your ass beat by a villain or hero, -40 karma.
I told you that Spider-Man was a menace. Yeah,
But
like
committing a violent crime.
mhm,
Wow. Oh, that's cool.
defeating an unearthly foe. Yeah, and you can sort of see that like the XP for blood is in there. But like if you prevent certain things happening, oh, you prevented a misdemeanor, that gets you XP. Same thing in here. If you protect shrines or roads or things like that of your clan, you get XP. So you have an actual reason to get involved when those things happen. And there's a lot of heroic deeds on there. So in play, that has driven some of the coolest role playing I've ever seen. People really act like these wandering heroes of the Kung Fu apocalypse. Like, and they do heroic stuff or villainous stuff, depending on what you get XP for. So that's probably the coolest bit of design I did. And I really, they took me like a week to design, and they've wound up being like by far my favorite part of the game in terms of like what it actually does at a table. It's really cool stuff.
It's great. It's really satisfying as just a ref or a game master when the incentives in the system drives the intended behavior,
Yep.
and the intended behavior will often have unintended consequences, and that's one of the greatest joys of the game. It's one of the things that causes sort of unexpected things to come up. It's one of the great joys of role-playing games.
That sparks joy, man. Yeah, those guys had it right.
So
Yeah.
what game is that karma table from?
That's from Marvel Superheroes. It's also called Face Rip.
Face
What
rip.
edition?
First, I think.
I think this is the first edition that I have.
Yeah, that's like from one of the box sets, I believe. It's been.
It is, yeah. I've got the advanced box set plus a few books. I got it from someone's collection this past summer, so I haven't played it. I've never played it, but
Oh,
it
dude,
was.
yeah, it plays really well. And if you play my game and play that game, you're going to see a lot of similarity because the effect charts also based on the charts at the end of that game.
Oh,
It's a little old, so like some of the ideas are kind of
86.
awkward. Yeah, I mean it's as old as I am, which is also as old as the Fist of the North Star movie. By the way, I was born on the day that came out in Japan. It was fate. But yeah, so it's a weird one to read, but man, if you can actually start running it and playing Marvel Face Rip, it's one of the most fantastically accurate to the source material TTRPGs you will ever play. It feels like playing like 1970s and 80s, like Silver Age Marvel heroes. It is really, really solid. And I've stolen from it shamelessly for my game because it turns out those things inspired a lot of really great anime.
Yeah. Well, I tell you what, I'll have to check it out someday. As soon as I have time to play superhero RPG, I'll try that out.
Good man.
So we got probably 10 minutes in our usual running time. So let's talk about, first of all, the community that you've been building up. You mentioned, I don't know if it was just in the green room, but you mentioned that, you've got a website, you've got a store on drive-thru, you've got a Discord channel. Tell me about all the good stuff you've got.
All right, the Discord's probably the coolest thing. We've had the Discord since the beginning. Let me give you an invite to. Let's see, edit invite link. Never expire. Now we're talking. Okay, so yeah, so the Fistiverse is our Discord. Actually, I'll just send this to you later on. But yeah, the Fistiverse is our Discord, place of all things Fist, the fistiest place on earth. Just go there. I'm there pretty constantly. I'll put up little polls and things like that for what I'm going to design next. So it's a cool place with exceptionally cool people. We actually do have a website. That was an experiment this last year. And you can see it's hooked up to it's got our Discord. It's got my little YouTube channel. It's got my Twitter where I will repost a whole bunch of anime cheesecake art. The Patreon is a little $2 patron thing. That's kind of like just for updates and news. Subscribe to that. You help fund art. I always put your money to the most awesome possible use. It links to our shop on DTRPG, which has the character sheet, the free intro adventure Blood from God's Eye, and you can see the Fist of the North Star inspired artwork there. It's also got a teaser for our upcoming game All Above Heaven, which is the even more absurdly powerful space opera Shansha version of this game. So that's going to be interesting to design. I have a little forum in there. It's just a little forum that could, but most of the actual discussion takes place in the Fistiverse, so Discord. And on the right there, you can see that my design blog, where I talk about the different ideas I have for the game, is there as well. So I've got unbelievable output. I just make all kinds of crap. So that's the goodies there. The takeaway from that is go to the Discord, go to the Fistiverse. There's invites all over the place. I'll send you guys one if I can figure out how to send anything on Steam. Oh, here, I'll put it in the private chat. There we go. There you go, guys. Cool. You can spread that around. But yeah, everyone's invited. I want everyone who's interested in the game to come over, talk shop about it. I can answer any questions. And we got a lot of people there that are also excited about the game. There's even oh goodness, I forgot about this. We have a what do you call it? virtual tabletop for it as well, based on Foundry. One of my wonderful fans just kind of put it together for his home game, and he was kindly enough to make a version of it that we could all use. It's based on like an older version of Foundry, but if you are a virtual tabletop guy, then you can give me $2 and go to the Patreon and get total access to all of that stuff for the rest of your life. It's not a bad use of $2. And it's pretty cool. I'm not amazing at Foundry yet, but as far as I've been playing it, I've really enjoyed it. And he put like literally everything in the core book in there. So yeah, if you're a virtual tabletop guy, give that a try.
Oh, that's cool.
Goodness.
I've never used Foundry myself, but it's I think it says a lot. I'm just going to underscore this. It says a lot that you have someone who would do that. You know, a fan who would just put that together.
Oh, man, I have the best fans on the planet.
Oh,
I've like the people that love my game love it, and it's so great. Like it's an honor, like to be a part of the lives of these people.
to sort of do your passion. You know, you're obvious this type of game, this setting is obviously your passion, and to
Oh, yeah.
find other people who are interested in that's great. And for people who are listening later on podcast or whatever on Apple, it's 5emperorsgames.com, and I'm going to make sure
That's
that
baby.
link, if it's not already in the show notes, I'm going to take care of it after the show so that you can go check that out. That's where you find all the links to all that stuff that we've been talking about. So I hope you do check that out.
We haven't even talked about my Kickstarter at all. Completely forgot.
I'll be honest, and this might be something you might and anybody else out there who's thinking about doing Kickstarters might want to look into in the future. I wasn't able to find it in a few minutes of searching, so I don't know if it's coming up on a Google search. But
let me look. Yeah, actually,
if you link
right.
that for me, I'll make sure that everybody gets it.
Let's see. Oh yeah, it's like the 6th option for me. Ugh, that's pretty far down. You know, I'm gonna link it up to you. Here you go. Yeah. Usually search engine optimization. If you look for Lone Wolf Fist, you will get my game. Unfortunately, you have to name things after your core product, and it's hard to SEO those and also be creative in the way you want to go. So it's Lone Wolf Fist Acid and Steel. It's my very first supplement. I'm adding Naraka, which is our version of Hell, and like a whole cast of like a new type of hero, the Damned Heroes, who draw power from the Ashura, which are like the devil gods that are both the architects and landscape of that hell. So there's that, and there's also my floating robot fortress city, Bab el Kaminar, which is like this circling like Dyson sphere moon thing, which has got this huge like atomic punk like clockwork and gear city inside, and they have their own little robots. Their hero type are the artificial heroes, who are robots so they can learn to be human by mastering kung fu, or become giant transhuman tank robot transformers that just smash people. Your call, whatever you want to do. But yeah, that's a kind of a mock-up of the cover. It's a little bit different because I had to kind of squish it down to fit with the things, but those are elements of the cover. And as you can see, we've already funded. It was only a little modest ass, a $2,000 goal. But $40 gets you a hardback, $15 gets you a PDF. You can also back for PDFs or hardbacks of the core book as well in this. So if this is your first time, it's a good way to get your feet wet. And I'm putting a lot of free goodies up there. The very first update was all of the writing for all of the Ashura. So you're talking about like hundreds of new powers that everybody who backed now has access to. And I'm going to do that with everything as I write it. I'm looking to get the writing done the next 2-3 months, and it should be in your hands right around July-ish of next year is my current estimate. And that's actually a pretty conservative estimate. So look forward to that, folks. Also, if you have a friendly local game store, my friend Rob there does, I have a group of 3 versions or 3 hardbacks of both the supplement and the core book at a very, very discounted rate. So check that out if you think that'll work and that'll sell in your game store. I highly encourage you to put it on there. We're super happy to have actual presence in our friendly local game stores. We always try to support them.
Oh, that's good of you. They're still around, mostly floating around as restaurants with game tables.
Awesome.
That's amazing. I'm going to make sure that that link is also available to everybody later in the show notes. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see that, I'm scrolling through these things. There's some really cool stuff there. I wanted to give a last opportunity. I want to give chat one more chance. If you have any questions for Joel, and while we wait for chat, Daddy Warpig, last chance to ask or comment on anything you've seen and heard today.
It's just like one long, loud fart.
No, if I had any questions, I would have jumped in. I think it's interesting the path though it took through not just anime, but a bunch of or several different wuxia systems. And I think the long path of experience with different systems that didn't work and different systems that almost worked, speaks well to someone who has clearly honed what they want and set about to create a system that addresses the weaknesses and flaws they've seen before. So I sincerely hope things go well for you in the Kickstarter. And I hope that anyone who has listened to the show today and heard about it goes and contributes to the Kickstarter and gets a copy and tries it out.
It's a hell of a game, folks. Even if I don't get a single backer out of any of the promo I'm going to be doing over the next 3 weeks, I got to tell you, I'm already realizing my dream. The core system does exactly what I wanted it to do. It plays fantastically. I've got the game I always wanted to play, and I've already funded, so I'm going to get even more of it. So I'm a really happy dude. But if you want to get an awesome game that will absolutely sing at your table, and again, your players are going to be fist fighting tanks, so they're going to love you for it. Sure, pick up a copy. Yeah, why not? Give it a whirl. Give it a one shot. Pick up the free copy of Acid and Steel on Drive-Thru or of Blood from God's Eye on a Drive-Thru RPG. It's a free intro adventure. It's the whole adventure. You could also get a GM screen for like it's $2 for the PDF on there, and there's also going to be a cheat sheet for your players as well here in the next couple of days. So plenty of resources to dip your toe in if you're just interested in wanting to try, or if you just want to shamelessly steal ideas. Go ahead, man. So it's a big hobby, and I want people to be enthused about it.
Cool. And that'll be your last word, unless you have anything else you want to add. That was a great pitch.
I wish everyone a good fist and a great fisting to all. Merry Fistmas, everybody.
Merry indeed. I'll say my piece. It's been a pleasure talking to you. I said before the show when we were talking about having you on, I was like, this guy seems like a great fit. Thank you for proving me right. I hope you made a couple more fans today. And I hope everybody who listens later, if you haven't yet, go check out that site. If the Kickstarter's already done by then, just enjoy what you got, or enjoy his community here. And I really appreciate you for coming on here today, Joel.
And guys, thanks for having me. This has been a blast. I love talking about me.
All right. We have that in common. I love talking about me too. But we always give Daddy Warpig the last word here, so take us away, please.
All right, folks. This has been Geek Gab for Monday, December 9th, 2024. We want to thank everyone who tuned in and listened live. We want to thank everyone who will tune in and listen later. Just a reminder, you can catch us Monday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific. And we're going to be missing a day just after the 20th, because the 20th is Friday, which makes Monday the 23rd. We are not going to be broadcasting the 23rd because I'm going to be going into surgery on the 20th. So we're going to be skipping that show, and that's the show right before Christmas, so we'd probably be skipping it anyway. But we will be back a week later on the 30th. So looking forward to that. let's see what else. You can get us on youtube.com/geekgab. Once again, that's youtube.com/geekgab. You can also get us on soundcloud.com, on the Google Play Store, and on iTunes.com, or on the iTunes media store. Just do a search for Geek Gab. Subscribe to us on the device of your choice. Listen to us on the web, or download us to your computer. We are signing out for today, folks, but don't you worry, don't you fret. We will be back.